Good evening. We are finished working on Project 1. You're probably in the stage where you are revising your draft based off comments from me and your peers. What I want to do now is talk about Project 2. So if you go into Project 2 and assignments, Project 2 proposal and annotated bibliography. Many of you have probably heard of an annotated bibliography. You have heard of a proposal. And when we think about these two things that are connected for the sake of this project, they don't always seem inherently connected. They don't always seem like they automatically go together. But for an English class, for your history courses, psychology, any other academic course, there's a high likelihood regardless of how far you go in academia, that you will be asked to write a proposal, i.e. to project what you plan to research, why you want to research, and the issues that come along with that research, and also an annotated bibliography, which explores research that has already been done about the topic or subject that you've selected. I want you to know that for your Project 2, you want to select a topic that you will use for both Projects 2 and 3. Please do not embark on Project 2 and say, oh, well, I'm going to talk about cat breeding. And then for Project 3, say, oh, well, you did all that research on cat breeding, but I'm going to switch to nuclear fission and its effects on the environment. That would be silly because you would be increasing your workload. And we want to work smart, not hard, okay? Or actually, even if we don't work hard, we don't want to work stupid. So Projects 2 and 3 are created so that you build off of the other. So let's go ahead and get our brains focused that that's what we're going to do. So, after you've read the description, you'll see that you have to write a 250-word proposal that presents a question of reasonable scope that is researchable and argumentative. Go ahead and circle those words, researchable and argumentative. So the topic you've selected, the position and perspective you've chosen should not just be a yes or no. It shouldn't be, well, that's because what everyone thinks. We want to find something that we can look for research on and that we can argue, that we have a side and various ways to think about that side that we've chosen. So of reasonable scope, we mean something that you can do in the next 3 weeks, 5 weeks, 2 weeks, however long your course is. So we are not writing dissertations. We are not writing master's thesis. We are not writing capstone projects. What we're doing is we are writing a paper for English 111. That means that you are not going to have the solution for world hunger. You are not finding the cure to cancer. You are not seeking how to find the secret to happiness. We are looking for an element that creates happiness, okay? So what we might do is think of a small part of a big puzzle, okay? So you have to identify the argument's context. In Project 1, context was a significant part of what you did. You had to set a contextual definition, and that definition included, based on a particular situation, this is what we mean. Well, this is how argument and research happens. It doesn't happen kind of all willy-nilly. What happens is something happens in a specific context or a specific situation, environment, or based on specific elements of a particular idea. And then, based on those elements, those ideas, those situations, people come up with reasons why it happened. So, for example, think about it in terms of discipline at your home growing up. In your house, it may have been that if you were disrespectful to your parents, they just brushed it off. That was their context. But for other children, like at my house, when my kid is disrespectful, we have to talk about why you were disrespectful and what led to that disrespect. And so you might have your phone taken away. You might have your iPad taken away. You might have me go off on you, right? Because being disrespectful, right? We beget disrespect with disrespect. But what we see is that the context of the situation warrants different responses from people. And that's what we mean as argumentative and researchable. And so one might research how removing items of value from teenagers affects their response to rules and regulations. That is something that we could research, as well as something that can be argued that either it's a good idea or it's not a good idea, or there are other things that one could do in order to affect young people's responses to rules and regulations in their home. All right. And so it's your responsibility to set the context, set the environment, the reason why you are writing about this. It can't be, well, because I have Project 2. If you choose to write about gun control, part of your context might be the recent UCLA shooting where the young man, I believe it was a young man, committed a murder-suicide speculatively over grades. And so you would say, gun violence is out of control. We can see that because X, Y, and Z. Here is a situation that occurred that reflects the reasons why and the position I'm taking on this particular issue. So, additionally, besides context, you have to have a position. You have to pick a side. Neutrality isn't always a good thing. You have to think about how do I feel? Oftentimes people will ask me how I feel about Kim Kardashian. And I'll say, I don't feel anything about her. However, if you ask me how I feel about the state of education in North Carolina, I might have plenty to say. But why I say that, we could all agree on. We all agree that we feel like the state of education in the southeastern United States needs work. But why we think it needs work is different. So I think the state of education in North Carolina needs work because, and these are my perspectives, what are the reasons in which I think this is a problem, an issue, something that should be discussed or argued. Secondly, we need to think about who are we talking to. So I said that I believe that there's an issue with education in North Carolina. People who live in Virginia probably don't care about that. They're like, well, my kids don't go to school there. However, my specific audience, parents, teachers, administrators of public schools in North Carolina would be interested in that. And so what I've done is I've excised or excluded people who aren't relevant to my discussion. Therefore, I'm saying that you can read my paper. It might give you ideas, but I'm not exactly talking to you. And so I have to be clear about who my specific audience is, how they would be interested in this issue, and how I could persuade them most effectively. Next, I have to have rhetorically sound subclaims. That sounds pretty serious, doesn't it? And I always encourage students to have at least 4 or 5 subclaims, because that means that I can extend my argument over and over again. I have more than just 1 or 2 reasons. So it wouldn't be acceptable for my child to tell me that the reason she wants a new phone is because she broke her old one. And I would say, well, it sounds like you need to keep your broken one. But if she added on the idea that the fact that her old phone was outdated, it didn't have great assistive technologies, and a myriad of other reasons, I might be more persuaded. And so when we think about rhetorically sound subclaims, which you'll see here in this line, what we're talking about is how can you persuade your audience, the people that you have identified as most important, logically. How can I tell them things that actually make sense? How can I persuade them or convince them that what I'm saying is credible, that they can trust the research and the claims that I'm presenting to them, as well as that emotional pull, right? So if my kid says to me, oh, well, I think I deserve a new phone because I threw my other one across the room, that would not persuade me logically, because why'd you throw it across the room? It doesn't persuade me Emotionally, all it does is make me mad that something I paid for, you threw it across the room. By the way, my kid didn't do that. As well as I don't find her to be a trustworthy person with a new product. And so those are things where her argument would fail on all three grounds. And so we always want to think about, does it make sense? Is my audience feeling something based on what I'm saying? Do they have some sort of emotional reaction? And is it credible? Can they trust who I am as a speaker? The resources that I've pulled in, can they trust those writers, those researchers, the studies I've selected? And can they trust the reasons why I want to do whatever it is I want to do? The other thing we have to consider in our proposal, potential counter arguments. So we have to be prepared to say, I know what my counter audience, the people who disagree with me, I know what they would say. However, in our proposal, we have to think of ways that we would address them. What are at least one or two ways in which we would present a potential counter argument? Lastly, for our proposal, we need to think about solutions or conclusions. When we think about solutions and conclusions, how can we fix it? What will it take to fix it? Who was responsible for fixing it? And so at this point, none of these things besides context have to really be developed. What we want are concrete ideas for our subclaims and counter arguments that would logically align with the position and perspective, our thesis statement that we're presenting. And so when we think about it, if you're thinking of, well, how can I get a little bit more information about this? Keywords that you can research in your textbook and online: thesis statement, research question, subclaims, counterclaims or counter arguments, rhetorical moves or rhetorical strategies in writing, solutions and conclusions. There are a myriad of resources offered in your textbook as well as in our Blackboard site that can help you with this. At your earliest convenience, you can find a template. If you select to use it, you can, you do not have to, in course documents. I hope this is helpful for you. Have a great day.